Welcome to the full Week 14 Sunday football breakdown. If you're new, you've never been here before, welcome. My name is Max. I make these every single week for Thursday Night Football, all the games on Sunday, and Monday Night Football to help you with your fantasy teams as well as your higher or lower projections. The picks on those projections, last week we went 18-5. Thursday night we went 5-2. We're doing really well. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of this stuff. Usually after we talk about it, the lines tend to bump up a little bit too, so you can turn notifications on to see these as soon as you want. But if you enjoy this type of content, make sure you like this video. Now, if you've never been to a full Sunday breakdown before, one of these before, we're going to go in depth for 4 games. It'll be Atlanta, Minnesota. It'll be Seattle, Arizona, Buffalo, Los Angeles Rams, and Los Angeles Chargers, Kansas City Chiefs. But there will be a pick for each game at the end. There will be timestamps below. If you want to watch the full video, you can. If you want to check out a couple different games, you can. Whatever you want to do. All the timestamps are below. Before we get into anything else, though, I want to make sure you guys have the resources you need to make your picks with. First of all, if you want bonus cash, do it. All these links are in the description. Sleeper, Underdog, and Better will give you deposit bonuses and free picks to make your picks with. So, Sleeper, they'll match your first deposit up to $1,500, give you a free pick. Underdog, deposit bonus up to $1,000, give you a free pick. Better, deposit match up to $200, give you a free pick. You don't want to miss out on that. It's literally free cash. 2 other things, though. This week, specifically, on my Instagram, which is, again, linked below, my touchdown score picks, which I will walk through at the very, very end here. If we go 4 for 4 on those, last week we went 4 for 5, so I took one away. If we go 4 for 4 on those, 1 follower will get whatever we win. So if you're subscribed on YouTube, but you're not following on Instagram, make sure you do that. The last thing, on X, all of my picks go out, right? We hit a David Montgomery first touchdown this past Thursday night. That was exclusively on X. All you got to do is follow. Again, you can turn notifications on, Instagram, X, whatever you want to do. But make sure you guys are following. I appreciate all the recent support. It's been unbelievable. But without further ado, guys, let's get into these breakdowns. We are going to start with the Atlanta Falcons. I'll get my notebook over here. The Atlanta Falcons against the Minnesota Vikings. What we always do for these games is we start with data outliers. The data outliers in this game. The Atlanta Falcons are allowing the 5th most receptions to opposing running backs and the 5th most receptions to opposing wide receivers. They're getting passed on. Why is that the case? Why is it a lot of receptions? Well, they play a lot of zone. The 7th most zone in the NFL and the 8th most too high coverage. Now, we'll talk about the too high stuff for the Falcons versus Minnesota because Falcons, it's very diverse. You get cover 2, cover 4, cover 6, a lot of different stuff with Falcons. Minnesota, though, also runs a ton of zone. On the other side, the data outliers for the Vikings defense. They run the 4th most zone in the NFL, the most too high, but they run a ton of quarters, a ton of cover 4, and it helps their run defense out a lot. We'll talk about the run defense at the end of this game's breakdown. But run defense is really good. What happens? You got to throw the ball on them. Minnesota's allowing the 3rd most pass attempts in the league, the 3rd most pass yards, the 3rd most wide receiver yards, and the 2nd most wide receiver receptions. Now, when you look at receiver production, it's super important to look at the target rates. We're going to talk about that. But we got to see how these players do against zone in terms of fantasy points per dropback for quarterbacks, as well as wide receiver target rates and all of that good stuff. So if you look at the coverage matrix offensively, quarterbacks against zone coverage, you can find the Minnesota Vikings and the Atlanta Falcons. We'll search these ones up for you. So you find Kirk Cousins here, 26th ranked quarterback against zone coverage in terms of fantasy points per dropback. So not great. Sam Darnold, a little bit more up here, 18th with 0.36 fantasy points per dropback against zone. It's not great. We're not going to look at the quarterbacks. I don't think Kirk was playing well enough to really lean into his projections on anything. Like even 3rd most pass attempts, 3rd most pass yards, I don't feel comfortable leaning into that with Kirk Cousins at all. And again, if you guys didn't see when I was showing you earlier, to get all the projections we're about to start talking about, click that link below. Sleeper, Underdog, and Better has all of them. I'm going to be looking at the ones on Sleeper right now. But again, you guys got to join with code LEADS, LEADS, to get all those free picks on those sites. But looking at this game, we'll start with the Vikings pass catchers against zone. It's super muddy. It's super, super muddy. Yards per route run, Justin Jefferson's 1, Jordan Addison 2. Josh Oliver is number 3, which is interesting. Targets, Justin Jefferson number 1, Jordan Addison number 2. TJ Hawkinson, interestingly enough, against zone, 4.2 targets per game and 3+ receptions per game against zone. But receptions still, he falls below Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and Aaron Jones. Now, the interesting thing about Atlanta's target rates, 5th highest slot target rate, so that would mean Jordan Addison. But Jefferson still has more targets, more yards per route run. He's running a decent amount of routes from the slot. You also have guys like Jalen Naylor running routes from the slot. And then Hawkinson runs less than I thought, to be honest with you, but he does run some. But the second highest rate out of the backfield. So I go look at this game right here. And last week, the one pick we missed in the Sunday slate entirely was Aaron Jones. We picked receiving yards instead of receptions. His receptions hit, but he didn't get 18 yards. I think he had like 10 yards. We'll pull this up really quick. But I truthfully, he had 3 catches for 6 yards. So he didn't touch 17 yards, but his catch projection was 2.5. It's at 17.5 again this week. Look, if you're going to lean into anything on that side, and truthfully, I'm not going to confidently do it, I would go Aaron Jones 3 receptions. I like a big game for all the pass catchers on the Vikings side, though. I think Sam Darnold can have a very good game, even though he's not great against zone overall. He's playing better recently. There was a little drop-off in the middle of the year. He's been playing better since that drop-off. And I don't know. I really, really trust this Vikings pass offense to move the football. I think they win this game. On the other side, though, if the Falcons are going to be trailing, they already can't run the ball against a really good run defense. They're going to have to throw the ball a ton. Where are you going to look in the receiving game there? Drake London. Guys, one of our picks last week was a super similar scenario. It was Drake London 6+ catches. He had at least 6 last week. I'm going to pull it up, make sure I have the exact amount. He had 9 last week on 16 targets. It was a very, very similar scenario. Now, Drake London's route participation is very diverse, but he runs 32.2% of his routes from the slot and has the most targets per route run in the slot. So when he's in the slot, Kirk Cousins is throwing him the football more than anybody else. In terms of zone, we talked about the Vikings playing the 4th most zone in the league. Drake London, 1.98 yards per route run against zone. Most targets, most receptions. That's where I'm leaning there. I think Drake London 6+ catches is one of my favorite picks, especially because, again, I think the Atlanta Falcons are going to be trailing a little bit. That is really the only way I lean. The run defense is here. Atlanta's defense is 17th in yards per game and yards per carry, but they're allowing the 12th most rush attempts. If you really want to lean to the Vikings run game, go ahead. Be my guest. I'm not going to. Other side, Minnesota, fewest yards per game, 2nd fewest yards per carry, 2nd fewest attempts. Like, I'm not going to touch the run game on that side. So Atlanta, Minnesota, 2 very zone-heavy teams. We lean into Drake London. We did that last time. Very similar scenario when the Falcons played the Chargers. The slot rates were a little bit different. We'll talk about the Chargers defense, though. They play a ton of zone. And, again, 9 catches on 16 targets in a game where they were trailing. I see a very similar game flow this game. I love Drake London receptions. Let's move to the second game now. We will talk Seattle, Arizona. Seattle is on the road this game, and they are underdogs, 2.5-point underdogs at Arizona. We'll talk about the outcome of that game after, but we got to talk data outliers first. So this game's fascinating to me because the last time they played was a big Trey McBride game, and we're going to lean into Trey McBride again. But the numbers don't like him as much as I expected them to, truthfully. We were on his 6+ catches 2 weeks ago when they played, and it hit. But I look at Seattle. They're giving up the 9th most rush yards, and I want to go pull up some game logs against for you guys. 9th most rush yards for running backs against the Seattle Seahawks, which is fascinating to me. Like, you think of the Seahawks defense, you don't think, they're a big run team. Brees had 60, and you look at this. This is what scares me. Like, James Conner had 7 for 8 against them. McCaffrey had 80. Kyron had 70. Middle of the year, they struggled, I guess. So James Cook had a big game. Bijan had a big game. Garendo almost had 100, with Mason having 73. Tyron Tracy had 100+. Like, I'm surprised that they're giving up this many rush yards, but it's something to note. You have to understand it and take it with a grain of salt. The other aspect here, though, defensively, they have the 10th most man-to-man. They run the 10th most man-to-man in the entire NFL. Now, last time these two teams played, let me pull up the game log for you guys. Last time these two teams played, it was a where am I going here? Trey McBride game. 12 catches, 133 yards. And on the other side, there really wasn't much to write home with the receivers. Like, you look at this, it was Greg Dortch, Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson had 54 yards. Marvin Harrison at 47. When you go break down the data now in terms of who is the best on the Arizona Cardinals against pure man, yards per route run, Marvin Harrison Jr. at 1.94, Elijah Higgins at 1.54, Trey McBride at 1.46. In terms of overall targets, receptions, Harrison with the most targets, Harrison with the most receptions, but Trey McBride with a much better reception percentage. And then Michael Wilson third in targets and receptions. So I look at that and I'm like, okay, Marvin Harrison Jr. technically, like by numbers, is the best against man coverage, but can you trust his route participation in terms of where they're being targeted? And I don't think you can. Fourth highest slot target rate and the ninth highest inline target rate. That is Trey McBride, and that has Trey McBride written all over it. It's not to say Trey McBride is bad against man. He still has more than 1 yard per out run against man, which is a pretty solid number. He just does better against zone. So again, I am going to lean back into Trey McBride yards. Looking at the projection for this game, he is at right now 68.5. Like he's hit it in 3 straight. You can go catches, but the thing is, when a team plays man coverage, I tend to lean yards before I lean catches. Like Thursday night was the perfect example. Lions run the most man in the entire NFL. Christian Watson's catch projection, I believe, was 3.5. So it did hit. But his yards projection against a really man-heavy team was 48, need 114. It's the explosive playability. It's the beating one-on-one coverage with minimal help on the outside or over top. To me, that leans yards. Whereas zone, if you're going to sit back, you're going to catch the ball, and a couple guys are going to rally to you. It's not going to be big explosive plays, especially for a tight end. So McBride yards is where you go, but I'm leaning into Trey McBride there. On the other side, the Arizona Cardinals are giving up the 11th most wide receiver receptions. They play the 12th most zone, so nothing super crazy there. But they have the 6th highest running back target rate. The 6th highest running back target rate. That's what happens when you play zone, right? Let's look at the game logs for the Seattle Seahawks against these guys, because it's not really a consistent output in terms of receiving for the Seattle Seahawks team. Interestingly enough, though, Kenneth Walker is questionable. Now, you see this, 4 for 52 against Arizona. It's going to be a pass fest. Arizona's run defense is kind of middle of the pack. It's going to be a pass fest. They're really, really good against Kenneth Walker on the ground. So I think if Walker goes, you lean into his receiving production. Right now, he is projected 20 receiving yards and 4 catches. 4 catches is a lot, but I think I would feel comfortable. Last game, he had 6 targets, 4 receptions, 52 yards. And again, you look at some of the other zone-heavy teams like the New York Giants, he had 7 for 57. Granted, they were losing that game, which talked about Atlanta. He had 24 receiving yards. Buffalo, another super zone-heavy team, 33 receiving yards. Rams are pretty balanced, so you can't really lean into anything there. Against man-heavy teams like Denver, he only had 6. Detroit is, I guess, an outlier. He had 36 yards. Detroit's very man-heavy. Jets are man-heavy. He had -3. So I look at this. He's much better receiving against the zone-heavy teams than he is against the man-heavy teams. I think if you're going to lean anything for that game based on the target rates, based on the coverage that the Arizona Cardinals play, you lean into Kenneth Walker. Now, you do have to look at the zone numbers for the Seattle Seahawks too. And again, if Kenneth Walker's out, I'm almost going to blindly go with Zach Charbonnet receiving because he is the main receiving guy on that team to begin with, but he's getting less snaps. So definitely something to note there. But in terms of overall yardage, in terms of targets and stuff, hold on one second. I'm going to plug my computer in so it doesn't die on you guys. But in terms of overall targets, receptions, and yardage for the Seahawks against zone, DK, JSN tied for the most targets, but Kenneth Walker has the 3rd most targets. In terms of receptions, JSN has the most receptions. Kenneth Walker and DK tied for 2nd. Zach Charbonnet has the 4th most too. Targets, or that's receptions. Zach Charbonnet has the 5th most targets. So if you're going to lean anything in this game, I do think you go running back receiving. The only area that it worries me is if Kenneth Walker doesn't play because he's injured, he's questionable. My guess is he's going to play, but on the off chance he doesn't, you really, really have to think about what Zach Charbonnet can do in terms of overall receiving production. The run game for Arizona defensively is solid, but in terms of overall receiving production, if Kenneth Walker's out, you lean into Zach Charbonnet. If it seems like there's no limitations on Kenneth Walker, you still lean into Walker. I'm not going to go Charbonnet. I'm going to go back up over Walker if Walker's playing. It's not happening. But you look at the last time these two teams played too, you do have to understand that data there. It's very important. We talked about how good JSN was. We go to game logs here. We know how good JSN is, especially against zone. 6 for 77 and a touchdown. And we can go look at some zone-heavy teams there. They're also, in terms of like target rate to receivers out wide in the slot, nothing really sticks out. But JSN projected 64 yards. He's actually hit that in what, five straight games. Zone heavy teams again. Like, see, he only had 3 for 39 against Miami, which worries me. 4 for 31 against the Giants, which worries me. 3 for 9 against Atlanta, which worries me, and that's a slot team. 6 for 69 against Buffalo. Okay. I don't know. I don't know if it's just him being used more. I don't know if it has anything to do with game logs and missed games. Like, see, 6 for 69 here against Buffalo's own heavy team, but no DK Metcalf. 7 for 180 against the Rams. The Rams are pretty balanced in terms of coverage and slot rate. Yeah, I actually do hesitate to lean into JSN a little bit, but if you're going on pass game performance, JSN is a solid pick. I'm going McBride yards, and probably if Kenneth Walker plays, Kenneth Walker receiving yards, if not Charbonnet receiving. Those are the picks for that game. If you guys have made it halfway through or about halfway through the video, again, I appreciate you hopping on. Appreciate you watching. We'll talk Buffalo Rams. But if you are new, you're not subscribed already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the family. Again, the support has been absolutely insane recently, guys. I appreciate you big time. I am so blessed. We're on the road to 8K. By the end of this video, we might be hitting it. So it's unbelievable what you guys have done for me. I help by doing my best to help you guys, and I appreciate you helping me big time. Let's talk Rams, Bills. Oh, actually, before we do, though, I do think Seattle upsets Arizona. I'm still rocking with the road dog. Something about the way Seattle's playing defense right now. Arizona, tough letdown last week. Big emotional game. Seattle, big win. I think Seattle wins this game on the road. And if I'm going to pick anything there, it's going to be +2.5. I'm not going to go straight, but +2.5. Let's talk Bills-Rams. Another game I think could be an upset here. I think Rams at home, this is a sneaky spot for them. Very, very sneaky spot for the Rams here. Not playing great football as of late, but Bills riding a super emotional high. It's bound to come down at some point, in my opinion. They're playing good football, but I think it's going to take a team that commits to the run, which the Rams can and will do. We'll talk about the data here, to keep Josh Allen off the field. To me, that is the biggest note here, because the Buffalo Bills run the 9th most zone, have the 6th highest slot rate. So we'll talk about what Cooper Kupp can do and will do in that game. But the overall rushing numbers defensively, I want to show you guys this. And we saw it with the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey had like 6 carries for 70 yards to start the game, whatever it was. Overall rush yards per game, you can find the Buffalo Bills middle of the pack, right? 121.9. But you look at the attempts. For some odd reason, teams are not running the football on the Buffalo Bills. They run a ton of too high stuff, a ton of zone, which is the Sean McDermott staple. But teams aren't running on them, probably because they're losing games a lot. So I'm telling you, if the Rams can keep this close or even get ahead early, like this is a game where if I'm the Rams, I win the coin toss, I'm taking the ball to start the game. Look at this. Buffalo Bills, 3rd most yards per carry in the entire NFL, guys. 3rd most yards per carry in the entire NFL. Efficiency-wise, Kyron Williams can have a big game here. A big, big game here. I also want to look at the explosive rush numbers here. Explosive run percentage. Buffalo Bills, again, 3rd highest explosive run percentage in the entire NFL. That's a big number, guys. Like that is a big number. The explosive run percentage was huge for us when we talked about the game on Thursday. 2 of the 7 picks we did, Jacobs' explosive run, Gibbs' explosive run, both hit in the first half. So to me, that's a very interesting spot, especially when you look at the offensive numbers in terms of explosive runs, because the Los Angeles Rams have struggled a little bit offensively this year. Granted, there was a blip with like 4 or 5 games where they didn't have Puka, they didn't have Cooper Kupp. The only thing that worries me now is I look at the Los Angeles Rams. They have the lowest explosive run percentage in the entire NFL. That pushes me away. But we talk about the Bills playing so much zone, the slot rate. I do want to pull up some game logs for slot receivers. Now, Cooper Kupp is running 55.6% of his routes in the slot, most targets, most receptions against zone coverage. He's going to have a good game. That's the receiver I want to be on. But I do want to look at the slot production against the Buffalo Bills, because that is always where we look. It's where we've looked in the past, and it's been really, really good for us. I'm kind of going to throw away the last game. I'm going to be real with you guys. I'm not going to look too much into that. But you look at the other games. Xavier Worthy had 4 for 61. You look at the Hold up, here we go. Xavier Worthy, 4 for 61. Where are we at? Here we go. 4 for 61. Josh Downs, 70 for 72. Tyreek Hill was a slot guy there, 80 yards. JSN, 6 for 69. He's the slot guy there. Tyler Boyd was actually the leading receiver. He's a slot guy in Tennessee against them. This, you guys remember this. We talked about this a bunch with Devontae Adams before Devontae Adams came to the Jets when Allen Lazard was playing. Allen Lazard was the slot guy prior to Devontae Adams and prior to him getting hurt. 6 for 114. You look at this game. Stephon Diggs was a slot guy. 6 for 82 against the Buffalo Bills. I don't really want to lean into the Ravens data too much. They're also winning by like 30 in that game the entire time. That's how it goes. 8 for 79 for Christian Kirk. And then the next couple weeks before that, only 24 for Hill there, but Greg Dortch was the slot guy again in Arizona and far outperformed the others. The reality is if you're going to lean into a pass catcher against the Buffalo Bills, it has to be a slot guy. And Kupp has the most routes, highest route percentage, most targets versus zone. Interestingly enough, though, one other data outlier for the Bills, highest running back target rate. Now, if I'm smart, I am probably watering down Kupp's yards and Kyren Williams' scrimmage yards because, again, this Bills team, if you can commit to the run, will give up runs. We saw it with Christian McCaffrey. They weren't explosive running the football really until that game. They really started to lean into him. It's the classic bend but don't break defense. The red zone defense is very good in Buffalo too. I think Kyren Williams' scrimmage yards, we can look at the projection right now, is good. The only thing that worries me is the potential increase of Blake Corum usage. So Kyren Williams projected 68 rushing yards. That's kind of low. But if the game gets out of hand, I understand. In terms of scrimmage yards, it's at 84. Like, to me, 84 scrimmage yards is too low. He's hit it in 1, not that one, 2, not that one, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's hit it in 7 of 12, which is a good number, not great, but the numbers love that. Truthfully, I'm going to go Kupp before I go anything else. I'll pull back up Kupp's projections. I'm going to go Cooper Kupp before I go anything else in this game. I honestly don't even know if I'm going to lean into Kyren Williams that much, but Kupp's even 7 receptions. It seems high, but he's had 7 in 1, 2, 3, 4 of 8. And you can look at yards if you want. He's projected 69 yards. He did 69 yards in 1. He got hurt that game, so 2, 3, 4. So less. Oh, actually, no, the same. Look, if it's zone, I'll go receptions. If it's man, I'll go yards. The Bills are extremely high zone. I'll go 7 receptions for Kupp. They're going to have to throw the ball a ton, too. But I will tell you, the other side is fascinating. Hold on one second here. The other side, Los Angeles Rams, 7th most rush yards to opposing running backs and the 4th most rush attempts. They are giving up a lot on the ground. Not great against the run right now. But they have the 9th most tight end yards given up. Which is interesting because you look at this team and you wouldn't really think. You would think if they're not great on the ground that they would be at least decent through the air against the pass. I don't know, guys. I don't know. This Rams defense is very fascinating. I think there's a lot of different things you can look at here. 5th most rush yards per game in terms of overall rush attempts. 4th most rush attempts in terms of overall yards per carry. A 12th most yards per carry. And in terms of, let me pull this up for you guys. I'm not showing you right now, am I? There we go. In terms of overall zone and man gap stuff, the Rams here are 9th in terms of zone efficiency, and they're much better against man gap. Look at that. Wow. Bottom 10 in terms, or top 10 defensively in terms of man gap stuff. Now, the Bills are a man gap team, so it's very interesting to note that. So there's a little bit of an edge there if you're the Rams. You feel like in terms of your rush production, you have an edge on that side of the ball where you look at the Rams or you look at the Bills run the offense and you say, James Cook is going to run X amount of zone runs, X amount of man gap runs, and we feel confident in the ones that we see more of. Let me just make sure that's the case here still. Yeah, Bills are pretty even, but in terms of comparative man gap or zone scheme runs, they are higher in terms of man gap. So again, good lean there, but the highest inline target rate with the 9th most tight end yards given up, to me, screams Dalton Kincaid if he's playing. The only issue is they're very balanced in terms of coverage. They're going to show you a lot of different things. If the Bills win this game, they're 3.5-point favorites. They lead this game. It's going to be another James Cook game. They also have the 9th highest running back target rate. So for me, This is another, we did this last game and it hit, I think, in the second quarter when James Cook ran for that touchdown. This is another James Cook scrimmage yards game. Like, they only have his rush yards up right now. It's at 62, which is too low. But James Cook scrimmage yards for me is the way to lean there. On the other side, it's going to be Kupp catches before yards, but Kupp. That is the Buffalo Bills and the Los Angeles Rams. Let's move to Sunday night football. Los Angeles Chargers against Kansas City Chiefs. There really isn't too much to write home about here. If Ladd McConkey plays, he's going to have a great game. The Chiefs may be giving up the most tight end yards in the NFL, but they're running the 7th most man-to-man and being targeted in the slot at the 7th highest rate. So let's look at some of these past games here against Kansas City Chiefs. Last week, Jacoby Myers was kind of all over the place. He had a big game, but he was really good against man. That's why he had a huge game. You move down the list here. David Moore, 81 and a touchdown against the Chiefs. Khalil Shakir, 8 for 70. He was the slot guy there. In terms of the Denver Broncos, it was Velez, the slot guy, so 39 and a touchdown. Shepard, 48. Las Vegas again. Myers had a good game there. San Francisco, without Debo, I truthfully don't know who ran the most slot routes here, so we can check that out another time. But Shaheed was the slot guy when he was healthy. Look at that. McConkey had 5 for 67 and a touchdown last time they played. Falcons have a balanced slot attack, so I'm not going to lean into that too much. Jermaine Burton had 47. Zay Flowers, slot guy here, 6 for 37. So if the Chiefs are going to give stuff up, it's going to be to the slot, and that's obviously Ladd McConkey. Most tight end yards, though. I look at Will Dissly, and I think his line is going to get dropped down because of the dud he put up last week. 36 receiving yards, for me, is a little bit too low. The only issue is here, how does he do against man coverage? Because the Chiefs run the 7th most man in the entire NFL, and if you're looking at separation and yards per out run, like Will Dissly's the number 2 zone guy. He's got more catches than Ladd McConkey, actually. So 1 less target, but 4 more catches than Ladd McConkey against zone. But you look at man, yards per route run against man. Where are we at? Here we go. Will Dissly, 0.29 yards per route run against man. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is 8th on the entire team. Not good. Really, really not good. So I would lean away from Will Dissly in that extent. And I want to actually go look at some game logs for tight ends against the Chiefs too, because I want to see if the more athletic guys are having more success. Like Isaiah Likely, best example, can beat man like nobody's business. Gesicki, 91. Pitts can beat man, 59. Dissly had 2 for 24 against him that last time they played. Kittle absolutely can, 6 for 92. Bowers had 2 great games against them. Jatavion Sanders, Knox, I don't know. Kroll and Troutman, I don't know. Otton, the 8 for 77 is interesting because that is a guy who's also very bad against man coverage in terms of yards per out run, but he's still produced. So if you want to get risky, go ahead. Go Will Dissly, 36 yards. I think the best pick there is Ladd McConkey, and I would go yards before I went receptions there. On the other side, very simple. Chargers run the 3rd most zone, and they're very balanced in terms of where they're being targeted. So there really is no lean here. But when you go look at the Kansas City Chiefs zone numbers, there are a couple places you can look. So in terms of overall targets, Travis Kelce by far the most, more than double the next, which is DeAndre Hopkins. But DeAndre Hopkins hasn't been there all year. In terms of receptions, though, Kelce 44, Hopkins 23. Reception percentage higher for Hopkins. Worthy with 18, Gray for 15. We can go look at the past games against the Kansas City Chiefs as well. That's a very good way to look at this too. Past games against the Los Angeles Chargers. But you saw a guy who was very diverse in his routes last week, Drake London, have a pretty good game. He had, 9 for 86. Zay Flowers, 5 for 62. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase both had really good games on prime time. Calvin Ridley, 5 for 84 and 2 touchdowns. Tillman, Judy, each with 11 targets, 7, 6. Nothing super crazy there, but Olave, 8 for 107. Receiver production has been there in the past, but the routes have to be diverse. Let's look at tight end production too. Nothing super crazy that sticks out. Actually, I've not allowed a tight end to get more than, 89 for Kelce in week 4. That's interesting to note, though. But look at Noah Gray. 4 for 40 against zone in week 4. To me, that's a very interesting lean. Now, looking at some of the projections for the Chiefs in this game, I think Hopkins' 4 catches is too low against zone. Again, he's very, very good against zone. 2nd most receptions, and he hasn't been there the entire year. He's establishing a rapport with Mahomes. They're going to have to throw the ball too, because if you look at the run defense, This Chargers run defense is pretty good. Pretty good. We can go over here. Rush yards per game, Los Angeles Chargers. Or sorry, yards per carry. Los Angeles Chargers. Oh, maybe they're not as good as we thought. Okay. Wow, look at that. So better rush yards per game. So they are top half in rush yards per game, but not super great in the overall efficiency in terms of explosive run percentage. Again, above average. So when you look at that stuff, you don't lean too much into the run game, but the Chiefs are going to throw the ball in this game. Last time these two teams played, Patrick Mahomes, 19 for 29, 245, a touchdown to pick, 5 rushes for 12 yards. In terms of overall pass attempts, you have guys like Burrow, Jameis, Kirk throwing 39 plus times. But really, that's it. So that, to me, actually, the more I look into it, I worry a little bit about the production. Now, Noah Gray's projected 2.5 catches. I think that might be a little bit too low, especially if the attention's going to go on to Travis Kelce. I think that might be a little bit too low, especially the way he's been playing. But I don't know if I can really confidently lean anywhere else. Like, I don't know if I want to lean into Travis Kelce. He had a good game against him last time. He's projected 6 catches. He's gotten 6 in 3 of the last 4. 6 in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of 12. His yardage projection's 58. He's gotten that in 3 of the last 4. Also 7 of 12. But I don't know. Like, to me, DeAndre Hopkins, 4+ catches. He hasn't had less than, in terms of games where he's played full snaps, he hasn't had less than 3 catches. And every game he's played 59% plus, he's had at least 4. The one game he had 3 catches, he only played 47% of snaps. Like, I think Hopkins, just as a safety blanket, is a very good option. But again, if I'm saying that and I'm not confident in it, I'm not going to confidently lean into it. There's nothing there, especially because the Chiefs aren't really showing us much in terms of overall target rate for me to believe, yeah, I love Hopkins, like I love Drake London, or like I love Ladd McConkey or Trey McBride. Like, there's nothing that makes me believe that. So, looking at the holistic overview of all 4 games, we'll go through the picks for the others in a minute here. We have Drake London receptions. Love that. We have Trey McBride yards. We have Kenneth Walker, assuming he's playing receiving, but if he's out, we'll lean into Zach Charbonnet. Buffalo Rams, Cooper Kupp catches. James Cook scrimmage, depending on what it is. Again, you guys got to make sure you follow me on X for that. All that stuff will be out on there. But James Cook scrimmage, depending on what it is, or rushing, will be on James Cook in some capacity. And then I don't think you lean into Will Dissly, guys. I really don't think you do. He's just not great against man. He's not really a separator, but Ladd McConkey is, assuming he plays. Highest slot rate in the entire NFL as well. Ladd's a slot guy. That is the best pick there. Let's talk about the other games. We'll give 30-second breakdown for each one. So we have 3 upsets this week. We talked about 2 of them, Seattle, and I am going to pick the Rams to beat the Bills. I think it's a weird upset spot, but I think the Rams win. But we'll go Miami, New York Jets. Jets likely without Breece Hall here. Miami's playing really well. Fascinated to see how Tua does against a man-heavy team. The Jets run a lot more man than teams that the Dolphins have seen recently. I think Miami wins this game. They're 6-point favorites. I'm not going to touch either side, but I do think Miami wins this game. New Orleans against the Giants. Look, if you want another pick in this game, I'm going to blindly bet Alvin Kamara. Scrimmage yards. He's going to have probably 150 plus, to be honest with you. Worst run defense in the NFL right now in terms of overall yards per game, and they don't have Dexter Lawrence. Saints are going to move the football on him. Off chance Malik Neighbors doesn't play too. Like, the Giants got no shot there. New Orleans will win that one. Philadelphia over Carolina. Also probably going to blindly bet Saquon rushing yards. Carolina is the worst run defense in the NFL, probably outside of the New York Giants. No Dallas Goedert. Devontae Smith is back, which is nice, but Philly's not losing that game. Interesting, though, 13.5-point spread there. I would kind of like to be on Carolina's side there. I think they're playing good enough offensive football that even a little backdoor at the end could help us out. Pittsburgh, Cleveland. I would be wildly shocked if the Steelers lost to this Browns team twice. See the flag. No bias here. I would be shocked if they lost twice. Pittsburgh's going to win that game. I think the 6.5 number is really good. I like Najee to get in the end zone in that game. George Pickens' longest catch, we're going to be on that again, assuming he plays. And then I really like David Njoku for a bounce-back spot in that game. Now, if you guys are Browns fans or Steelers fans, I'll also link below. I have a full Browns-Steelers breakdown just like this, in-depth, about 15 minutes long. Check that out below. Next game, Tampa, Las Vegas. Baker's going to have a good game here regardless if Mike Evans plays or not. Raiders can stop the run. They force you to pass too, run a lot of man. Fascinated to see who separates more against man. I think you'll get your one-on-ones with Mike Evans, assuming he plays. But again, Cade Otton's not really a man guy, so who's going to be the number 2? I think Bucky Irving has a good game through the air there. Tennessee, Jacksonville. Tennessee is the 3-point favorite here. Look, I'm not going to pick Mac Jones, even if a 3-point divisional underdog. I'm not going to do it. Interesting here, though. Nick Westbrook-Akine's had great games the past couple weeks. But you look at his numbers compared to Calvin Ridley's against man coverage. Calvin Ridley is far and away the better receiver against man. Jacksonville runs the second most man in the league. This is a Calvin Ridley game, not a Nick Westbrook-Akine game. I know he's scoring touchdowns. This is a Calvin Ridley game. I think 100-plus is feasible. I will be on his yards, whatever it is. But Calvin Ridley, Tennessee Titans win this game. Third upset, final upset. I think Chicago on the road goes into – are they on the road? Let me check. But I think Chicago beats San Francisco. That's the bottom line. Let's just double check here. Yes, they're on the road. San Francisco's a nightmare right now. They are a nightmare. And I know they're very banged up. This is not the truest sense of who the San Francisco 49ers are, but they are a nightmare right now. Nightmare. The Bears are not playing that bad, guys. They just lost by 3 points to arguably the best team in the NFL. They're really not playing that bad. I think if 2.5 or 3.5 point underdogs, I will definitely be on the points. I think Chicago can win that game, though. I don't think that's crazy to say. That is the breakdown for every single game. Again, if you guys enjoyed this stuff, I appreciate you hopping on. Thank you. If you're not part of the family, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like this video if you enjoyed as well. Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern, the Monday Night Football breakdown will be out for the Bengals-Cowboys game. So make sure you check that out. You can turn notifications on if you want to get it right away. But let me know which picks you guys are taking. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, and if you took anything on Thursday night that helped you out. Again, we were 5-2 on Thursday. We hit Watson yards, Jacobs' longest run, Gibbs' longest run. Laporta, we had yards. Laporta yards, they both hit, doesn't matter. And then the fifth one was Montgomery receiving, and that was our best pick of the night. And then we did not hit with Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed was literally MIA, which was crazy. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown did not hit. So 5-2, 18-5 last week. Let's continue to build on this. God bless you guys. I appreciate you hopping on and watching. We'll see you next time.